Alright, how's everyone doing? This is totally the first time I'm recording this video. So I'm gonna show you guys how I produce a song in the style of SOMBR. So first, I started with piano. I loaded up Grander, upright piano. Honestly, Logic has some pretty good stock plugins. I threw a CLA 2A slow attack, like slow ratio. And then the main thing, I think, was the 1/8 delay that I threw on it. That really brings out the harmonics. Like, listen to that darkness. And I reverse the piano. Real quick, I'm gonna show you how to do it. You cut it and then bounce in place, and then you reverse that hoe, and then you're done. Boom. Put it right before the chorus usually, and then it kind of does that, and it's like a cool fade in. And then there's like one cymbal transition to like the slower part. Through the bass is usually just one line. I use Ample Bass for this. It's free. And then I threw an amp, the Logic stock amp. Put it mostly through the amp because it gives more bass harmonics. Channel EQ, I high pass most of it, and then low pass, you know. You kind of want to keep a little bit of sub. I also put a slow compressor on there, but I also added R bass, and the Waves plugins are fire, I'm not gonna lie. Brings out more harmonic. As you can hear, there's like a little more sub and sub harmonics. I know saturation also works for that usually a bit. I also threw a little bit of chorus on there, just 6%. And then I side chained it to the kick. And what side chaining does is relatively fade it whenever the kick hits. And then with guitar, I loaded up CLA, just put this bitch on crunch mode. Turn it down quite a bit, turn down the bass, treble, compress, reverb, delay, pitch. I know SOMBR at the beginning of Back to Friends, he has like that. I doubled it. But yeah, I put a bit of distortion on it as well. Chorus to add that like dreamy texture-ish. Sometimes I get really lazy and I just throw vintage verb on the track if I know I'm not going to use it again. And I added Kickstart. This is like the best plugin ever. You can really hear the extent of it here. And then I just turned it down so it's not overwhelming. And for drums, I layered it with the tambourine. And I'm using addictive drums for this. Throw a bit of saturation on it. Compress it. Addictive drums, of course. I don't remember what kit I'm using. I believe it's one of them. City Nights, apparently. Parallel compressed as well, as you can see on this track. And Valhalla, I threw a little bit of reverb. This is the overall drum bus that I routed both the tambourine to. And then strings, these aren't very major. I did include them. It kind of builds up the last chorus, that's for sure. And this is just a very simple pad. It obviously goes under each chorus. I used Serum for this. I'm not very good at synthesizers, so I just loaded up preset. What? And then here's the vocals. This is my presets. So auto-tune, obviously. Always have some sort of pitch correction. I can love you better. I can love you better than he can. Throw an EQ, roll off everything under 80 usually. This time I went for a bit higher. It depends what mic you're using, but high pass you always just roll off under 80. Depends what mic you're using for the rest of it. I know the NT2A or whatever I'm using is a bit harsh, so I took out a bit. Just use your ears. Usually I'll put a CLA 76 here. You use vintage VCA. That one represents a 76 as well. And I'll usually double compress. I don't know. I didn't feel like it needed too much for this song. It was already pretty compressed. And then de-esser, obviously, because no one likes to hear S's in their ears. Just psst. Saturn 2, a little bit of saturation. You don't really need this. I added air after and this to bring out the rest of the plugins. And I always parallel compress my vocals as well. I have a preset for that, and I just crank it and then turn down the fader. I'm using a spring reverb, Arturia Springs. I know you could route it through a guitar pedal spring reverb. I use 2 reverbs for this. room reverb. I use this bitch to like bring out more room, you know, like make it more surround, because the Spring doesn't really get that done. I set both of them relatively low distance, like decay. And I throw a quarter note delay on it as well, with a little bit of overdrive, high pass and low pass, everything like under 300 and over 6K. Here's what I use for distortion. I'm using a distortion pedal. I know that kind of narrows it, but I felt like for this song it was kind of good. Before that, I always throw the EQ to cut out like everything harsh around like the mud region, the harsh region. And then after, I also throw on an EQ and just high pass and low pass both ends. And that's the vocal, so. Touch me slowly when we fall. After that, what I also did, I just duplicated my track for certain regions because it kind of goes into the other region. And that's usually what you want to do. You could just bus it through this, create a bus for both lead vocals, but I'm not doing that. Then I also reverse the first word of the leads on I Can Love You, because it sounded cool. I can love you better. I know there's a lot of tutorials on how to reverse lead vocals. I got really lazy and I don't play guitar that much, so I just loaded up. You do a bit of finger picking, like like palm muted finger pickings, and then usually this has pretty much everything on it, the amp and effects. I layered it with this guitar, or not guitar. I layered it with a little bell plucking. Same thing. I loaded up Omnisphere, loaded up a bell patch. I personally think Cedar Space was a good patch, and I use this usually all the time when I do the guitar pickings. For the doubles, I will usually compress these with the CLA 76. Always double your doubles, so you can push one left and right, and then you have more of a wide spread in choruses. That's usually what he does in his music. Same with harmonies. Now, if we listen to these together, I auto-tuned every individual track as well. Make sure when you sing these, you're like relatively in key, especially if you don't have a plugin like Vocaline, like I don't. And that's what this sounds like. I can love you better, I can love you better than he can. It depends what kind of music you're making. Usually the first chorus is a little softer with like low doubles, but you always want to, because listen how empty this shit sounds without it. It just doesn't sound as full or as good, especially when there's so much going on. And for the plugins, I literally just routed it to the same distortion pedal. I should set that first. You want to be careful on what's like going where. And for here, for CLA, you can put pre-fader. Make sure that's always first, parallel compression. Finishing the double chain, I just routed everything with a bit more, like 2 decibels higher. More reverb, more delay. Same room reverb, same spring. I also compressed it, EQ'd it. And then harmony is basically the same thing going on. A bit of saturation, which I don't relatively need here. Soft, like this is a slow compressor. You always want to make sure you're slow compressing. I stacked all these so I wouldn't have to do each of them individually, but you can also do this if you're doing some fancy stuff with your automation. And then for the ooze, slow compressor, added a bit of chorus to give it a dreamy width. This one is the first one that I kind of changed it up. Oh, great. I added a way bigger reverb for the harmonies here. As you can see, the reverb is way bigger. 6-second decay, low cut, pre-delay, and everything. You just want dreamier ooze. Also sent it to the spring lead reverb just for an extra ump. You really just want to wash out these ooze. And then Valhalla delay, quarter note delay to add some like more width. As you can tell by my Logic project, I'm pretty lazy. Gain staging is like the key to making things not too loud. I recommend you look up gain staging and like what your instrument should usually be at, like bass, piano. There's a bunch of websites that tell you. I can't teach that all in one video, and it's a very lengthy process. You just want to make sure nothing's too loud, nothing's too quiet. And then for the master bus, I threw an EQ on. Usually I will use FabFilter, just a better EQ in general, or anything. And then I added some saturation. Don't judge my chain. There's a very specific reason I did this. And then C4 is a multi-band compressor. Usually you won't need this. This is a very another process to learn. I still don't even understand multiband compression. It's very irritating. After that, a little bit of spread. I used Ozone for this. Honestly, they have the best spreader. I added a 2-1 slow compressor for this song. It's not like bouncy beat or whatever. Studio Fed is basically the bus master, which I'm using right now. And then the limiter. This is what gives you that loudness. Logic has a really good limiter as well. If you go to limiter, let's see here. Stereo. So gain, output level, set this to like -8, 9 or -1 is usually what I do. Look ahead is good. And then you just want to turn it up to as loud as you want your master. Use the loudness meter, and what you want to be hitting is -9. -9 or -8. But yeah, so I'm hitting around, I think, 9. But that's about the extent of it. I'm not a professional. I didn't go to school for this. I kind of just learned as I went, or learned online. And that's basically how you make a SOMBR song in Logic or anything that you use. For this sake, I'm using Logic. And for reference, this song is out everywhere, streaming under Danny Baylen, so make sure you give it a listen if you do like it. If you don't, then tell me why. And this is what it sounds like. I can love you better.